Hey guys, welcome to the Nick Bahe YouTube page. You know what you need to do. You need to subscribe, you need to ring the bell, you need to like the page, you need to leave a comment. I appreciate you. Well, you just opened a bubbly as we started this thing. Kaplowy. I love it. We're back. We're on YouTube. Everything's a little rusty. The equipment had to get dusted off a little bit here, but we're back, baby. Yeah. We're back.
We might have some glitchiness here, so
bear with us.
Yeah,
bear with us with the technical difficulties. You know, we in our very informal pre-show meeting. My line was, I don't know if we have an A topic today, but we have like a whole bunch of B topics. Like, I don't know if there is a pressing thing. I mean, we're a week out from the spring game, and so we'll do like a spring game preview and then a spring game recap. The interesting thing real quick with the spring game is, the way I understand is Nebraska at this point only has 12 able-bodied offensive linemen total.
Yeah, it's low.
Like, how do you do I don't know how you could maybe do like could you do 2 quarters? Could you do a quarter?
I think at this point you got 6 a squad. If you're
and you just
you got to go.
Yeah,
you got to go, and you pretty much your 2 best guys are probably that are left will by the end of the second half should just be out, and then everybody else kind of has to bear with it and play.
Would you rather, like, as I say, we're not going to get it, like, for the spring game format, would you rather just have them go, like, do real football for a quarter and even just call it?
No, I want them to play a game of football, like play the game, right?
No, I know, but I'm saying, like, with only six linemen on each team, there's just a finite amount of plays they could probably run, right? I don't know. You tell me.
They need to be able to play football. Like, in the end, I was thinking about this the other night. I was thinking about last year, you know, where they were doing 2-hand touch. And it
was awful. The spring game was awful.
This big concern with getting hurt is so extreme that you get away from the idea that, like, you can't play the game that you're supposed to be playing. That's the game. Football is the game they're playing, and they don't play that game until, 12 times in the fall. So all year, this other stuff, that's not football, technically. Like, you still got to play the game. Like, start to finish, real plays, real tackling, real blocking, real drives, like real endurance. Show me you can play a game.
Right.
Like, a quarter is a quarter. Like, you got to play a game. Right?
I was just thinking about, because I'm totally with you. Like, what I wanted to, before I heard about the 12 offensive linemen total thing, I was like, enough of the nonsense. Just play a full real game. Don't just play a game. Don't not think it. Just do that.
And here's another philosophy we should live by. Until we're better, who cares?
Right.
Everybody needs to prove they're good before we need to worry about who gets hurt. Nobody's good enough.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, we got to get good to the point where, like, oh, that guy's we got these 3 pros that we don't want to get. Like, who are they? They don't exist right now. We just have a bunch of guys that are unproven. They're not winners. Like, they're not proven winners yet. So they need to play the game.
Well, there's a reason, like, to in preseason NFL games, there's a reason Patrick Mahomes maybe doesn't play, or he plays a series.
Yes.
You know why? Because he's won Super Bowls and he's great and he's proven. Like, you can't be like, I tell you what, Richard Torres,
we can't risk it. No, I like Richard Torres. I like him, but risk it. You know what I'm saying? I like Richard Torres.
I like that.
But we're risking it.
Yes.
When you become Patrick Mahomes, we will keep you out.
Right.
Because we know what we got, right? We want you. Nobody's touching Patrick.
Until I like they call him Patrick.
Yeah.
I like that you're referring to him as Patrick. Okay, continue.
That's where me and Mahomes
are. You guys are homeboys, apparently.
But until any of these guys are even remotely at a level, they need to play a lot of football.
Right.
And that means the full game. I watched us for 5 years be bad at the little things of the game. And like, I always think just growing up and playing a lot in the playground where you're just playing. You're always playing the game. You learn how to just, like, all those little intricacies of how to win and lose can only be played when it's like you're going. It's really you're in the flow of it. Not, hey, we're doing a drill. Hey, we're doing a half speed or like, you got to play the game.
Yeah, because it's hard to do, like, okay, we're doing, inside the 10, down 3.
Yeah.
You know, like you almost need like the full gamut leading up to that.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So
you know what I mean?
Think about this.
Especially if you're doing two-hand touch in that spot.
I'm doing two-hand touch from the 5 and in. So we know we did an install yesterday and we really practiced those plays, and it's like, okay, think about that. Now, let's go to a game. And let's say you don't start there. You start 80 yards away and they drive on you for 80 yards and you're down to the 3 and you just did 10 plays. And so you're tired.
Yes.
And now you got to like shift from that to, oh, what did we stall after that? And I just did 9 plays and I'm exhausted. That is a different scenario than here's our 5 yards.
Then like here's a prepackaged, like you literally like you open it up like, okay, here it is.
Goal line.
Down 7. No timeouts, 1.5, ball at the 40. Okay, we're going to do that. No, it's so much better if it's in the flow of it, and that's hard to replicate. It's funny we talk about this because Rhule had a quote, and I want to kind of reset, see if you vibe with me on the formula here. I've kind of created this in my head. Rhule had a quote. This was maybe last week. He said, quote, a lot of it will come down to confidence, right? A lot will come down to at what point do they believe they can really win? And when I say believe, like we all say we believe, but when you're down 17-7 in the second quarter, the great teams that played here probably laughed.
Yeah.
And I think he's right. And tell me, like, this is the order of how this should go, okay? So you got to believe. Number one, you got to believe and buy into what the coach is telling you. Number 2 is you got to get that belief validated with results.
Yeah.
That then creates confidence and momentum, which then has a chance to ultimately end up in an expectation of winning and a standard of results, which in essence is kind of a culture and what everybody wants to achieve. But those are like the order of, like, you got to believe and buy in. You got to have some results that are validated. That creates real confidence and momentum, which then creates an expectation of winning. Like he brings up that 17-7 in the second quarter, or even the whole thing of like, at what point do they really believe they can win? Like there clearly was, we don't need to go over the past, but there was a crisis of confidence of these guys like truly feeling like they can win. And the great teams they expect to find a way to win. When
they're up, they put people away. They step on the throat.
Right.
I think we saw for a few years there, we were up and everybody would get like you can tell when fans get tense, they're feeling how the players feel too. Like it's like
you can feel it.
It's kind of like we're both together on that. A team that's confident gives the fans confidence. It kind of is the same thing where when we were up sometimes and things went, we were like, we weren't sure every time, and most of the time it started going south. I mean, it was just a lot of that, and that tells you that we didn't have confidence. Now, it's interesting you say belief. Me and my brother had this kind of similar conversation, and I kind of was in line with you. Like, you got to sort of believe first, and my brother was talking about
style.
Belief comes last, and so I think you can kind of get.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to.
That's sort of like a philosophy. Like a philosophy debate that we could maybe get into some other time. But it is kind of interesting. You mentioned that. And I was thinking about, we had that exact conversation because I kind of thought you kind of got to believe first, even go down the path. But he says belief comes from seeing the results.
Well, I think we're maybe getting into
it's maybe
semantics and how we define believing. And like I talk about believing in what the coach is telling me.
Yeah, maybe that's right. Okay.
And he's more like believing in the whole thing, maybe.
Believing that you're going to win.
Yeah.
Like, that maybe comes from...
I just think you got to I first got to buy... You're my coach. I first got to buy into what you are telling me to do.
Yep.
If I'm like, let me see if this works at the end, at the very end.
I think that's harder. It's harder to do it right if you don't believe, right? So that's where... That's a tricky conversation, and maybe we need to have like
full
down, like write down notes, think it through.
I know, rather than just throw it out there. But I just thought I saw that quote and I was like, he's right. And then I just got to my mind of like, because if you think about it, let's operate under the idea that my formula is the formula.
Yeah.
If you think then to the Frost era, you got to believe and buy into what the coach is telling you. I think the guy's bought in.
I do too.
But then the number 2 is you got to get that belief validated with results. That's where it just never fully happened. So then number 3 is the confidence and momentum, which never really happened. And then number 4 is that expectation of winning never really happened. So they never got past the formula of process 1.
Yeah, they got through the initial one
and never got to
step two. Never. It
was like Mario,
yeah.
and they went down. You know what I'm saying? And they never figured it out.
They were in a tube. Chin, 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 chin.
By the way, have you seen the previews for that Mario movie? I don't think I understand the movie. There's a nostalgia element that I'm like.
I know it did well at the box office.
It did terrific.
I think it did like 200 or 300 million in the first weekend, which is, it tells you there was a lot of us playing Mario Kart. That's all I can tell you. And a lot of us.
And Mario. And straight up Mario.
There's a lot of people playing Mario. A lot of people playing Mario Kart.
Right.
And then a lot of those people have had kids. They're like, well, if I'm going to a movie,
yeah,
I'll go to Mario.
One.
I at least will enjoy the Mario.
Hey, someone tweeted this out. If Mario and Luigi are brothers, why are they the Mario brother? Are their last names Mario? Is it Mario, and Luigi Mario? Like, why would it be like the Ruud brothers? You'd be like, it's Barrett and Bo Ruud. They're the Barrett brothers. It's like,
oh,
right?
But are they called the Mario
Aren't
brothers?
they called? Isn't it like Super Mario? It's called Super Mario Brothers,
Mario
right? Well, I'm saying like
brothers.
right? Am I wrong? Like I always thought Mario and Luigi were brothers. Are they not brothers?
Oh, yeah.
And are they both going after Princess?
Some Italian dudes. They're brothers.
Are they both? Like, are they both eyeing the same chick?
I got to think there's a big competition going on this scene. Like, they like each other, but they'll kill each other with one of those flashy stars if they have to get the princess.
I think they both. I think there's always understanding that Mario was like Princess was his girl, but like what? I mean, Luigi's in this thing too.
Luigi's going for the princess.
Luigi's going for the princess, but I don't know. How do we get into that? I don't know how we got into that. Okay, so clearly you can see how this pod's going to go. It's just going to be a bunch of...
I don't remember how that got...
I really realistically don't remember how we got into that. Okay, so we bring up the offensive lineman thing. Can I ask you about this? Today I'm just going to be like, I'm throwing things at you. What do you make of Rhule pumping up and talking up the offensive line? And he's done that. He did that like pretty early on. And maybe it was in like his signing day press conference where he has been adamant early on where he's like, hey man, there's a narrative out here that the offensive line was the problem or wasn't good. And I don't buy into that narrative. He's even talked about how this is as good of an offensive line that he's been around as a college coach. It says Bryce Benhart, an NFL player, that kind of stuff. Like, what's weird is Rhule strikes me as someone that isn't going to say anything he doesn't believe, but I can only chalk that up as to he's trying to give them confidence. But I'm struggling with this idea. Like you're telling me this same cast of characters who was pretty much terrible last year with the same position coach is now going to be good? I guess what help me?
I think part of it is it's got to be just... He's laying down sort of his line in the sand. He's going to have his guys back. He only can work with what he's got. So there's no reason for him to, not be very supportive. So this is, I think, just a strategy for him to try to build up some of these guys' confidence. And you know what? Like
that's fine.
And here's what I'll give him. Like Benhart, Cochran, Prohaska, like those are some big, good look. I mean, you got something to work with, at least. They're big human beings, right? So I think Rhule's going, like, look, these guys aren't 6'1" and 275 pounds. These are some 6'8", 6'7", 6'5".
Yeah, they fit the... Yeah.
They're big, like, human beings. So I think he at least says, like, we got something to work with. I think it's probably an overstatement that this is one of the best lines he's seen. I mean, you can turn the film. It wasn't great a lot of the time. It really wasn't.
No.
But that doesn't mean these guys are like going to be terrible. It just means that, hey, they got a long ways to go. But they got a coach that is willing to work with them.
It is going to be fascinating. Like, let's say Rhule's right and they go out and this offensive line is pretty good. It's fascinating to think that the only thing that changed was the head coach. And I guess the system and play calling, which I guess it's I mean, it makes sense that system, like certain skill sets in certain systems are going to yield better results.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting. He's been pretty consistent with that, but he also isn't one of those guys Rhule doesn't strike me as a guy that is going to say anything, because it's not like he's done this for every position group. It's not like he's sitting there and talking up the wide receivers or talking up the whatever, like it's not like he's said, I think this group's great. I think this group's great. Yeah. I mean, he's been more positive than negative, But it'll be interesting to see what that
it's
looks
sort of
like.
It's such a foundational part of your team. Your offensive line is sort of like the rock that it all forms around. So I think he's trying to build something there. It is. I mean, like I say, when I hear and read those things, I'm taken back a little bit.
I'm like, really?
Okay. I'm not mad at him for doing it. I think it's probably a good strategy, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if there's any major progress. I'll tell you one little tidbit that I love, and I'll maybe explain why I love this. So Matt Rhule came out and said, we're not having our linemen wear knee braces anymore.
Yeah.
Now, Nick, I can't tell you how much I love that.
Okay.
I can't tell you.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, these are athletes. Like, when you wear a knee brace, you are less of an athlete.
Right.
And I remember this, Bill Callahan came in and they required everybody to start wearing knee braces. Everybody. Linemen had to wear knee braces. Linebackers and tight ends were supposed to wear knee braces, or linebackers were. So I've never seen my brother about lose his mind. He made it about a week wearing these knee braces, and by the end of every practice, he's pulling them half off, and he's the most level-headed guy. He about lost his mind because you can't be
what
an
an
athlete
anecdote! Yeah,
and wear knee brace like real like the metal ones.
It's like little force. knee braces,
So like defensive ends wear knee braces. Like this was, and so and another thing, they always made us tape our ankles. I don't like my ankles taped. I think it makes you stiff. You lose that flexion. Like athletes, to me, like you need to be able to flex and move. And so for 4 years, I would fake taping my ankles. I just tape around the top to see a little bit, and they'd get in trouble, and they'd make me tape them, and then it was a battle because I go, athletes don't need those unless they're injured to me, and I love that he's laid this precedent. It's like, hey, look, you don't need to wear braces. Go be an athlete. Be a little bit more bendy. He thinks our linemen look too stiff because we were stiff.
Right.
So you got to be able to bend your knees. You got to be able to flex. I think that's part of athleticism. I think it sets a tone of like, this is big picture stuff. Why do we need to play in the spring game and scrimmage? And what? Because you're an athlete and you can handle it. Why do you not need to wear knee braces? You're an athlete. You can handle it.
Yeah.
It's a mindset.
Because I wonder how much you really are, like if you're going to get rolled up on to the point where you're going to get hurt, I doubt that if you have a knee brace on or not, like, is that really saving?
It could, but you know what? Like, it's also, those guys wear knee braces in games. Prohaska 2 years in a row.
Yeah. He
has torn his knee with a brace on, right? So to me, it does protect you to some degree. But to me, then you're worried about injuries more than it's like performance. Right. I want the best performance. I don't want people wearing knee braces. I don't want people wearing ankle tape unless they have bad ankles and they just
I had bad ankles. But I always wore ankle braces.
Yeah, so if you got bad ankles, you might wear braces. I think you lose spring.
Basketball is different than football too. There's a lot more.
Yeah, it's
starting and stopping in short bursts and stuff like that. But interesting. But
I saw that, and I don't know what it was about it. It's sort of a little step. It might be minuscule to most people. To me, I get a signal in the right direction. I go, I like that signal. Yeah. That signal tells me that's a mindset change for those linemen.
And I mean, just to build off of that too, we talked about it last week, even taking the green jerseys off the quarterbacks. It's a mindset change for everybody.
Yeah.
And again, I do think I'm not for the caveman days of, two a days, 3 hours a day, Oklahoma drill for 2 hours straight. If you want water, you're a puss. No.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is a delicate balance of like going too far with trying to protect and preserve, like, I mean, even there was Stan Van Gundy tweeted something earlier this year regarding the NBA. He was like, man, back in the 80s and 90s, there was like teams had like one trainer and one strength coach, and dudes were playing 82 games, and now we have all this different stuff, and guys can't make it through. Like something's.
It's a mindset. It becomes a mindset thing that that I think it's inevitable. Like if you're going to cater to a certain mindset, it's only going to get worse, right? So
I wonder if the linemen liked it.
What, knee braces?
Yeah, I wonder if they liked like taking them off or not.
For sure.
I bet they did.
For sure. Because if they don't, they'll wear them. Like if they say, I need them, they'll wear them. But if you don't need them, you're wearing them, and it's like your legs, your knees.
It makes sense. Your
knees get worse.
Right.
They'll get worse because they'll get weaker.
Right.
And you'll be less flexible. You will be a less flexible athlete. I couldn't play if I had to wear knee braces. I couldn't play football.
Right.
I mean that, Nick. I
can't believe that Bill Callahan wanted the linebackers and everybody to wear knee.
Defensive
I don't know if I mean, it's pretty rare you saw a linebacker ever that was rocking like big ass knee braces.
You know why? Because you don't succeed. You will then be out of the league, or you'll be out of like you can't play in knee braces. It's for non-athletes or something.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good anecdote right there.
Yeah. So, but your point was like, in the 70s, like take our dads. They came up in an era where 2-a-day practices. Yeah. They weren't allowed to have water. The coaches thought if you needed water, that means you were weak.
Yeah.
So these guys weren't allowed to drink water, which is, you just need water to function.
Yes.
So they were like hide water in their helmet. This was insane, but that's where it goes to the other side where you're just being stupid.
Right.
Versus this side, it's like you're not putting enough freedom and strain on guys to get the best out of them. Find the in-betweens.
I like that. That's good. By the way, I wrote this down. Is it kind of crazy? And maybe you have a better feel than I do. I genuinely have no clue what the offense is going to look like next year. Because you hear a little bit of everything. I hear fullbacks. I hear some lineups with like 2 or 3 tight ends on the field. I hear about running quarterbacks. I hear like I'm serious. I genuinely have no clue what the offense is going to look like next year when Nebraska, like when they trot out against Minnesota on the road to start the year. I have no idea what it's going to look like. If they're going to be the gun, understand? I don't know.
I mean, they mentioned fullback.
They've mentioned huddling up,
which made me think it was going to be a little bit more pro style or like a little bit more that tempo. But then it's like if you're going to do running quarterback, it seems like usually you go a little bit. It's more of an up tempo. So we'll see. I mean, dude, I don't know. I really don't know. But I mean, I guess
that funny, and maybe
spring
that's
will
good.
show us. I think maybe more of the style. But I think it's sort of. I've never seen more sort of like they're switching players around right now more than I think I've ever seen. You know what I'm saying? Just in terms of like, not just like, hey, are you an end or a linebacker? It's like, hey, are you a
offense or defense?
Or are you a tight end?
Right.
Are you a receiver or are you a H-back?
Yes.
Or are you a DB or are you an H-back? Like,
right.
These are things that are pretty
dramatic switches
changes.
Personnel-wise.
I do think that's a good sign, though, if Rhule feels like he can see talent. Like, I think that to me is Rhule going like, that guy's here.
Now,
like
maybe
it might be obvious to him.
He seems like, and maybe this is like me drinking the Kool-Aid already. Like he seems like he's got an eye for that stuff. Like he can watch a guy, he can see something in him, whether it be in the front end of recruiting or even in this sort of scenario where he's in practice. He's like, you know what, you should be on defense, or you should be. But I don't know. I wrote that down. I'm glad I wasn't completely alone in it. I'm like, I have no idea what the offense is going to look like. None.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's good from the standpoint of the element of surprise, but at the same time, I have no clue.
Well, I think the first things first is they're going to find out like who they got in each side of the ball.
Right.
I mean, legitimately, they're trying to figure out who's our offense and who's our defense, first of all. So then I think they're going to say, here are the pieces we got in offense. And it seems like they have less of a tie to a specific style and a little bit more like, we're going to build it around the players. So I think they're going to start by, here are the pieces we feel good about. Now we're going to build the pieces into like how, like we're going to build around the pieces rather than make the pieces.
They don't seem, and we've talked about that, like they don't seem beholden to like, we are going to do this and we are going to make the personnel fit into that.
That's what I mean. Yep.
They're like, well, let's see what we got, and then we'll build it around what we got.
Yeah, I think more than we've seen in the past. It seemingly is like the talk has not been system. The talk has been players,
right?
Even from the media. I mean, that's all we've been talking about, and all I've been hearing is like who's where and how are they developing.
which I don't know. I just, as much as anything, and I don't know how much they'll show, I am very excited to just see what the offense looks like, just from a real broad standpoint.
Yeah.
I read there was a story today by Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports that is interesting. And the headline of the story is, feeling the weight of Nebraska's plight, Matt Rhule seeks return to relevancy after humbling Panthers firing. And it's an interesting story, just talking about Nebraska's journey here through the abyss, struggling for 2 decades, Matt Rhule's journey and his sense of duty of trying to get Nebraska back to relevancy. But in the midst of Rhule's journey, he just got let go. And I obviously, now this is maybe seeing things how you want to see it. You never want a coach to struggle or anything like that. But is there something of value to be gained by failing? Like, is the fact that Rhule was fired, could you in a roundabout way find something positive in that?
Yeah, I mean, immediately once you started saying that, my brain went to, I think for our circumstance, it actually will help us, because I think sometimes when coaches come off of a lot of success one place, they roll right into another and they assume it's all going to work out exactly how it worked out before.
Yes.
I mean, not that that's exactly what happened to Frost, but there was a degree of that,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
There's a degree of that happened. Where Rhule is coming off of a big disappointment for him. You know, his only maybe disappointment in his career.
Yes.
But I will promise you one thing. Matt Rhule learned a lot.
Yes.
And the mistakes he's been thinking about for 6 months at Carolina, he's not going to let those mistakes happen here.
Right.
And I think that is part of what happens in life, that you either learn from mistakes or you don't. And I think this is a chance for him to learn from those mistakes and this go round not make them. So I think that's a great potential opportunity for him and for us.
I agree. Like, I read that story and it just got even just the headline got my with the wheels turning a little bit. And like, because I agree, like, you bring up Frost. There's something to being a little bit scared, a little bit of a concerning situation. And obviously this is hindsight, but Frost had kind of his entire life never really failed. Like, player, things maybe didn't work out at Stanford, but he still came to Nebraska and won a title.
Yeah.
And now he had some turbulence in 96, but still, like, ultimately the dude ended up on the mountaintop looking down at everybody else. And then his coaching career, he does the journey of, I'm at Northern Iowa, now I'm here, now I'm there. But then he gets to Oregon, and the second he's holding a play sheet, they're killing it, right?
Yep.
The second he gets his head coaching job, in 2 years, they go undefeated. So I think he walked in with a little bit of overconfidence and maybe a smidge of arrogance of what you just said of, like, I think when you've never failed, there's no reason to assume that it's not just the train of success is just going to keep on rolling. And so but Rhule, I think the thing that's good about Rhule is he was fired, but it doesn't appear to it that it's shaken the belief in himself. Like, he seems sure of himself.
Yeah.
But in a good way.
Yeah. You can kind of feel it. Like he just seemed, like I said, my comment from our last pod last week was Matt Rhule seems dialed in to me. And there's nothing about getting fired from Carolina that makes him seem any less dialed in than what I think he could be. Like, he seems dialed in, knowing what he needs to do. And I think part of that is he's had the experience in college, but now he's gone to the you've gone to the NFL, you've gone to the show, you've gotten that experience. And now it didn't work out right, but like, I think to me, he's now coming back feeling like, well, I learned something from the highest level that I maybe couldn't have learned in college, but this is where I fit. This is what I know better. And I'm going to take these other things that I've learned and apply them.
Yeah.
Right?
And not only getting fired in Carolina, but like, he had to endure some rough seasons at Temple and Baylor right away. Now, obviously, we know how those things ended. They ended well, but there's value in navigating a 3-win season and keeping guys engaged. And like, that's something that I think shocked Frost's system a little bit, where it's like, oh man, how do I now approach leadership when things aren't going well? And so I think there's real, like, that can test you as a leader. And I don't know. I was thinking about his journey, and it's the more I look at it, I'm like, there's a lot of good with that.
The knowledge that you learn by going through adversity, I don't think can be taught.
Right.
It can't be taught like from the outside or from a book or from like
a coach's clinic. I'm like, let me tell you here, when you're in a rough patch,
here's the adversity lesson.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like you can try, but there's something else that happens when you do go through it, because there's so many. It's too complex to explain unless you go through it almost.
Yes.
Like that's where adversity is life's greatest teacher. And so I think Matt Rhule has, and this is where I'm going to give him some of the benefit of the doubt going in, is like he's built 2 programs from the ground up that had a lot of success. And then he went to the NFL and sort of had struggles.
Right.
So I'm going to
say,
say,
to be fair, the NFL, the NFL can be, certain things can be out of your control that lead to, like there are certain things that if it isn't necessarily always your fault, but nevertheless, like you can't view that in that way if you're the individual involved with it.
It's a different animal in the NFL. It's salary caps, it's free agency. It's a little bit of a different animal.
There's someone else telling you, I want to play this guy, but my owner's saying you got to play this guy. It's not like Trev's going to be like, you need to put so-and-so in there, or I'm pulling, No, I mean, it really is. And that's going to be the big difference here. But yeah, I think the main point of like adversity and going through these different scenarios, it's all hard-earned knowledge that you cannot pay for, right?
And you can probably not actually teach. You have to earn it.
Here's another question for you, because I was listening to Tom Chattel on a podcast, and we're gonna break this down. Curious how you react to this, because when he said it, I was walking at a little double stroller, Mac and Marv on it, and I was walking and it hit me, and I was like, what the? So Chattel, in framing the pressure of the moment with Rhule, like the pressure that he is under taking over Nebraska now, that he tried to paint a picture, and I hope I interpreted what he was saying correctly, which I think I did, that the pressure is actually pretty low, maybe the lowest of any of the previous 4 to 5 coaches. And when he first said that, I thought, I don't know about that, because especially it kind of runs counter to what I've said, that I think the fans aren't going to be super patient with this. But let's talk it through. You want to talk it through here?
Yes.
Let's talk this through. So if you think about, and we have the value of hindsight now, knowing how these things ended, but really try to frame the pressure of the moment when they arrived. So when Bill Callahan arrived, Steve Peterson comes along, and he is literally like TNT. He takes it outside of Memorial Stadium. He booms it. And like he blows up everything, right? And he brings in this NFL guy that's never coached in college. All of a sudden, it's the West Coast offense that's coming to Lincoln, Nebraska. Like there was an element of like, man, this better work. That's pressure.
Yeah.
With Bo Pelini, you're handpicked by the legend of the program and Tom Osborne. That creates some things. There still was a really high standard of expectations around Nebraska.
Yeah.
Where even just winning a division, it was like, cool, loser. You're a loser. But because I still think Nebraska viewed themselves
winning division, cool.
Ooh, you won the Big 12 North. That's great. But that's how it was viewed.
Yeah.
Nebraska.
Something I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, God, you won the division. Okay, yeah. All right. I got out of bed today. What's up with this guy, right? Am I right? Hey, Bill, all right?
Why don't you do something hard, huh?
you won 9 games and won the North? Please. Tell me something we haven't all done. That was the attitude around here.
I don't get out of bed unless it's the Orange Bowl talk, okay?
Unless we're talking BCS title game
I don't even turn on the TV. You understand me? I don't know why I kind of became Trump there. I don't know what that was, but but anyway, Slice It, that's pressure. Riley, there was a little bit of who? Like there was the split nature of the hire. A lot of people were skeptical out the gates. There's a reason that, remember, we were in my parents' basement watching the Illinois game in year one, and they throw the ball on 3rd and 1, which stops the clock, and Illinois comes down and wins the game.
Yeah.
And from that point on, like, there was legitimate hot seat talk 4 or 5 games into the first year, which tells you there was a lot of people that had their eyes on the exit for Riley before this season even began. So I think that was pressure. Frost, obviously, while there was a long runway of patience, whenever you're branded as the savior of the program, that's pressure.
Yeah.
With Rhule, I don't know how to even quite frame the pressure. If I had to go, I feel like if I had to frame it, I have to go to extreme hyperbole of like, this is it. Like, this is it. This is the last chance for Nebraska before it's forever different, before Trev is likely out if this doesn't work. The sellout streak ends. Apathy could actually legitimately, realistically set in.
But that was what they said about Frost, too. He was the last guy. He was if it doesn't work with him, it won't work. That was the line, right?
Yep.
If it doesn't work with him,
and here we are.
And so we are here, right? But no, keep going.
Sorry. So, okay, but Chattel's point was with Rhule he doesn't sense this pressure of it needs to look like this schematically, or this feeling of you better obey the history and tradition of the program. And I agree, Rhule is the first coach that doesn't have to do it the way someone else did it. We put these weird constraints and requirements over these old coaches that I don't feel that way with Rhule. There is an element of like, well, listen, it's been 20 years since Nebraska's won anything. So like, whatever you want to do, just tell us. To go Quimby, it's like, just tell us your offense and we'll vote for it.
I guess it's more of a Iowa State thing.
No. Just tell us your philosophy and we'll agree with it. There is an element of that. So I guess I did my best to kind of bullet point, lay out the pressure for everybody. How would do you want to just rank who Rodney Dangerfield? Oh boy, who had the most pressure? Do we think if we had to rank?
So this is where here's where we need to clarify some things, because
just tell us your defense.
Just tell us your defense. Don't let them go to Wisconsin. There
is a part of Marge. We're doing Marge versus the Monorail Simpsons. Lyle Landley came in and okay, continue. Sorry.
So anyway, I guess for me though, I think in terms of expectations, right? So who's had the least amount of, you said pressure, right? So
yes,
I think in terms of expectations, the expectations for Rhule are low.
Right.
That's why more than pressure. I mean, I think that's where it's like,
we're getting into semantics game, but I like where keep going with that, because that's
anyway.
It's all encompassing. Yeah, expectations are a part of the pressure. I think
the expectations for Rhule are the lowest ever, so maybe the pressure then is the lowest, right? So I just think Rhule has a clean slate with low expectations. You say less interference about what sort of like
it does kind of feel like that, though, does it not?
So Solich, maybe expectations were the highest, like national championship.
I thought about that. I excluded him, but you could argue he had the most pressure. I mean, you're taking over for.
There was no pressure from him in terms of outside, like you need to do it this way, because Frank was a part of the original system.
Right. He was the OG.
He was the system, right? Option football, Nebraska way, national championship.
Yeah, there was no changing.
He was carrying on that.
Right.
And when Peterson blew that up, right, he brings in Bill Callahan, West Coast offense, right? That created a different kind of tension. It was like fighting what had worked with an NFL guy who wanted to do it differently and wanted to kind of discard all the traditions. And I know a lot of us that were inside, we knew the traditions were great. We were a part of them,
right?
And we knew these are winning traditions. Like we don't want to give up the traditions, right? And so there was that battle with Callahan, right? Now, Pelini, it was a little bit different. It was like, hey, bringing back more of the traditions, a little bit more Nebraska style. So people were really, the outside influenced a lot to get Pelini back.
Agree.
And influenced like wanting to keep the Nebraska thing, right? So that's when you're talking about the outside. We want to look this way. We want to be a Nebraska thing. Pelini didn't have to deal with that quite as much. But his expectations were, you got to win. And he won, and
it wasn't good enough.
It still wasn't good enough. So then Riley comes in, and he had to then fight again, he didn't feel like a Nebraska guy then.
No.
And so he was fighting that. So it's like Callahan and Riley had to fight you're an outsider, you're doing things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Expectations are
high
because you aren't.
Right.
You felt
we're not going to give you because you're not
short leash.
Yes.
So Pelini had a longer leash than those two.
Yep.
The same way Frost had a longer leash than Riley or Callahan.
Yeah, than any of them.
He was one of us, and he was bringing back some of the old stuff, right? So, but then Frost, of course, it's like he got the full runway. He got his opportunity. It didn't work out, and now Rhule kind of is going to be the benefit of the last. I think that's the last time we were able to be like demanding somebody to do it a certain way. It's more like, hey, we got to trust this person.
Yeah, you would think that the last person after, if this doesn't even make sense. I'm trying to think what the analogy would be. If four people try to go defuse a bomb and they all screw it up and the fifth guy comes in to try to do it, it's like that guy's probably under a lot of pressure, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, but it feels different for Rhule. In what you made a good point, like I think it's the combination of, I think the expectations are the lowest they've ever been, which impacts pressure, and this influence from the outside of either a split nature in the hire or a feeling of it's got to be done this way and you got to obey this and that. It feels like all that is gone.
Because those other guys, the other coaches with their, with their tenures, it beat a lot of that down.
Yes.
And Frost was the last one because he got the full runway. So there was a lot less of the Nebraska, like it has to be a Nebraska guy, it has to be this, because we kind of got that and it didn't work the way we thought it would.
Right.
And so I think that is giving Matt Rhule the open door. It really has. Like these last 10 years are giving Matt Rhule a very pressure-free, low expectation opportunity to do the job.
Yes. Like he's the first, I'm not saying I want this to happen, but he is the first coach that if he wanted to just go, black shirts tradition, we're moving on.
Wouldn't like it though.
I don't like it, but I'm saying like it would have been.
I'm not saying there'd be a letter in his mailbox.
Dear Mr. Rhule, you suck, and I disagree.
From Anonymous. Gosh darn. Yeah.
But like before, if someone imagine Bill Callahan's
how dare you?
First of all, how dare you? Second of all, I am going to punch you in the face when I see you. If Callahan or Riley would have gotten away with the black, it would have been like literally. I think there would have been a storming of Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
It just, as I talk this through, I think I'm now kind of vibing with with Chattel and his stuff. Like expectations are low, and there isn't this overhanging, not a cloud. That's not the right way to put it, because I don't want to act like it, just the overhanging. Like it's got to be done.
It's the outside, the Nebraska influence on the coach to to almost demand certain things.
Yeah, it was almost like, hey man, we're happy you're here. Totally trust you.
And the former
but you
players,
better do it like this,
we're
and
guilty.
this.
Like
yes,
we're guilty.
right.
Like I am guilty of this. Like I believe in some of the traditions. I still really want. Like I'm a big believer in the black shirt tradition. I want it.
Me
I
too.
will advocate for it. I think it's just there was a time where people were like, we ran option football and we went to West Coast, and then people were like, no. we're not a West Coast team. We never will be. We never should be. And
Right.
they were like trying to impose that on a coach,
Yes.
or like we were trying to tell people what plays to run. Almost.
Yes.
Like, no, this is the defense we need. Like, that is probably a step too far from the fan base and from former players and all that. So, yeah, I think that is something kind of unique to our fan base, but it's also why we're great fans is we care enough and we feel enough ownership in it that we want things to be a certain way.
It's just interesting though that as when Chattel brought that up, because it's funny how there are certain things that hit you go, no way. But then now that we've talked this through, I think I absolutely agree with that.
I think that's right. But here's
but
what
that
I'll
doesn't
say.
mean there's no pressure. Like
No.
there's
less pressure. The leash is shorter than Frost's leash, though. I promise you that.
Maybe that's where I'm like.
His leash will be short. I think he'll have a pressure-free 2 years, and then year 3, if he's not winning, he will probably be like closer to out the door than Frost would have been.
Agree.
Frost was going to get the full 4 and change, and I think Rhule's not going to get that sort of treatment. I think he's making enough money. He'll get 2 guaranteed. Take time, build it, pressure-free. But Nebraska fans are Nebraska fans. By year 3, we want results.
I agree.
That's just how it's going to be.
I agree. We're just bouncing around here. This is great.
Isn't this good?
I'm having a lot of fun.
We go in different.
I like having fun.
I don't think other people go where we go. We go to places.
I literally just write
We
down.
go.
I want to talk about the transfer portal and NIL for a second, just in general, just broad. I guess the first thing with the transfer portal that I wanted to talk about is like there feels like, and even you're seeing this in the NBA with guys changing teams and demanding trades and all this stuff. There feels like there's this devaluing of team going on over the course of the last 4, 5, 6 years, and it's really feeling like it's at its peak right now. The analogy in question I had is, I mean, just because like Creighton's starting point guard Ryan Nembhard is leaving.
Just thinking about it.
I mean, he is for two-year starter, led the team in minutes for 2 straight years, and he's in a perfect system. His team was in the Elite Eight. If everybody comes back, they're a preseason Final Four team. He's a starting point guard, and he is leaving to hitting the portal, probably in the name of NIL, to go somewhere else. And for me, like that one hit me, not just because of it's Creighton, but from the standpoint that I transferred. And I almost didn't transfer because I didn't want to do it to my teammates. I couldn't. My ass was riding the bench, and I still was like, I don't know if I can do this to my teammates. And there's just an ease at which people go, bye team, or I don't care. Like,
and you had to sacrifice. You had to sit out a year.
Sit out a year.
You had to sit out a year, and like I think you had to pay for your school.
Yes.
Like, I mean, Nick, that's hard.
Right. And so for me, I guess the first question I had was, there's this whole thought of like, were people always assholes and social media just revealed it? Or did social media create people's desire? Like, does it just kind of, by its nature, create a-holes?
A little bit of both.
You
get rewarded for
the more
a-hole-ish,
provocative and crazy,
the reward is not probably the right incentive, right?
So I guess, and I worded it better in my notes here, so I want to pull it up to make sure I have it. So I guess the question I is, were people always did people always kind of not be totally team people, and the transfer portal and NIL has revealed that? Or has it just created an option that wasn't ever really there? Like, because it used to be taboo.
I think here's the part that's tricky is I think the team aspect, it was more important, but it also, like, you got to realize, like, the options were worse for you. So, like, your incentive was, well, we're stuck here anyway.
Yeah.
Or it's difficult. So
Made it really hard to leave.
The incentive led to more, like, it incentivized better team attitude.
Right.
Where we are incentivizing worse team attitude. So you're going to see it. That's why it's happening.
Yeah, they're incentivizing and making it easier.
It's making it hard to be a good teammate because you can make more money by being a bad teammate.
Right.
So think about it. I mean, I look at the incentive structure. Like if the incentives usually point the way, the incentives say, go make money. Go, like even if you want to stay in that team, you're incentivized to pretend you're going to leave, so they pay you more.
Right.
That's a bad teammate. So you're incentivized to be a bad teammate. So I'm sympathetic to it, but I mean, I think part of me just goes, we're getting exactly what we're asking for. We're doing the NIL. We're doing the transfer portals this way. This
to me, it's all set. Yeah, you're right. Like that's about it's the transfer portal, and the combination of the transfer portal and NIL lends itself to people making decisions solely for themselves.
Yeah.
And when that's the case, obviously this is going to kind of be how it is.
Yeah.
It's just,
Nick, you make everybody sit out a year. You have to sit out 1 year
right.
to transfer. You watch that portal disappear because that's a sacrifice. That is really difficult to do.
It's even,
you must really want to transfer. You got to really want to transfer if you're willing to give yourself a year.
Right.
Of just like, I don't get to play for a year.
Right.
It's a lot. So that alone, and that doesn't even include the money side of it.
And so, because even now what you've seen is people, no matter what, like most people just enter the portal. Like I was reading, I think it was Max Asmith, Oral Roberts' best player, little guard, really can score. He's entered the portal and he is like checking other schools around, but he's still like, I think he's giving Oral Roberts his current team the last chance to like almost like I'm going to go on this visit, and then I'm going to come back to you. It's like, wow. And here's the hard part is you can't take the world that you lived in and that mindset and transplant you into today, because today's a different world. Like I couldn't imagine going into like, Coach Albin, hey, how you doing? Real quick. So I'm going to enter the portal. I'm going to go look at Nebraska. I'm going to look at Wichita State. I'm going to look at Northern Iowa. I am going to give you guys the last pitch.
If the money's
right and just how you, Coach Altman would be like, get the fuck out of my office.
Might sluck you.
I mean, he'd literally be like, you have 5 seconds to get out of my office before I break your nose.
It's so unthinkable because there was to me, like you understood it, like, hey, this system isn't right for Jeffrey, and he needs to go be in a system that's a run and gun, or he needs to be in an option game because he's not a throwing quarterback. Those are things you go, yeah, he probably needs a transfer. And then he needs to sit out a year, and it sucks for him, but it's the right move. People understand. But back then, if you were to say, I'm going to threaten to leave and check my options and then maybe come back, people wouldn't want you to come back. They'd be like, no way. The mindset would be like, no, don't you dare think about it.
Do you understand that? Because I mean, who's to say that we wouldn't have fallen victim to some of this stuff? If I'm not, so I don't want to act like.
Nick, but hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line.
But tough. You do realize that, like back in the day, for as much as like a dude like Grant Wistrom or like Brooke Behringer or T. Frage would have like entered the portal and like seen what was out there.
Yeah, one of the two would have, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yes,
one of the two.
So it's just. And so I'm trying to figure out, and you've done a good job of framing it, like where the incentive structure and just kind of like how we make it easy now for people to be about themselves. I just feel like just in general, there's just like team and the value of a team and is just under siege right now because everything that's popping up, all the different options for you lend itself for you to only think about you.
Yeah, I mean,
again, I don't want to sit here and act like I transferred, but I also feel like I transferred because I was in a basketball situation that was not a good playing situation, right?
Yeah, and you had to sit out and sacrifice, and you had to pay money to do it.
Yes,
you're not getting paid to do it; you were paying money,
right,
and sacrificing a chance to play by sitting out. So you had to do double sacrifice. So that just tells me the guy that's willing to do that really, really wants to do it. Like he needs to do it. And so it's not like, this is what's good for me. It's like, no, this was my only option.
I guess I just struggle with like when people are in great situations, basketball situations, football situations, something that 99.9% of all players dream to have.
Yeah.
And they leave. I'm like, that's a little, but
yeah,
where I can understand, we've talked coaching change, or I can understand maybe like you balled out at a low level and you want a chance at a high level.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll wrap my mind around that. You want a bigger role like me, like I can understand that. But I just struggle when dudes are like, they're the man somewhere and they want to enter the portal.
Yeah.
We
talked about the Wandale thing forever because we were like, he was the face of our program.
Right.
Like he had the full support of everybody. Like
right.
everything was, and it's like that.
And you could argue he ended up making the right decision.
But it was the right decision for Wandale and nobody else,
I don't know. I just wonder how hard it is for these guys. Like, I wonder how tight the team really is anymore.
I think about this. I think when you're a guy like Garrett Nelson and O'Shawn Mathis is getting paid, he's getting paid to come here. And I don't know what he was, if Nelson's getting paid.
He probably got a little something, but
man, you're probably not getting paid what they got to go get the mercenaries to come in to do, right? Like when you bring in like the hired guns.
Oh, for sure.
They're getting paid more than the guy that's like already here. So the incentive then becomes like, if you're not a bad teammate, you're not going to get paid. So he'd had to be a bad teammate to probably get paid.
Right. Isn't it weird?
And that's a bad situation.
It is weird to think that like the way the dudes really get the bag of money is to become the mercenary, become the guy that enters the portal. It's not usually the guys that are already there.
No, unless you are
a freakazoid.
You are like the quarterback at Alabama, you're getting paid no matter what. But if you're like a defensive end at a Big Ten school that's not Ohio State, like you could put yourself out in the market and make some money.
And so the only way to maybe get a bag is to put yourself in the portal and make the current school ante up a little bit. Because saw it happen last spring. Kansas State had a guard, Nigel Pack. Nigel Pack entered the portal and he went to Miami because John Ruiz was their big booster. He owns Life Wallet.
Yeah.
And it became known that he paid Nigel Pack $750,000, I think it was. Mm-hmm. When that came out, Miami's best player, Isaiah Wong, who had just led Miami to the Elite Eight, he immediately went in the portal because he's like, what the fuck? I'm the guy. I just led us to the Elite Eight. He's going to get way more than me? And so then he entered the portal, but then came back because I'm guarantee you then there was,
cheddar.
The cheddar cheese came his way. But all this stuff is just like, again, it feels like team is under siege a little bit.
Team it's secondary by a long shot right now to what am I getting? And that's, I don't actually blame the kids. I blame that this was allowed to sort of get to this place where it's at. It feels weird. And I think the kids though, they're handling it fine, but like,
and again, I think you're with me. I don't want to sit here and act like I wouldn't. I mean, if I could have gotten a bag of money, I'm not going to sit here and act like I wouldn't have been.
Times have changed. It is a different era. The question is do we want this to be the era forever, or do we want to revert it to something that's more, what I think is sustainable and something to be more team centric, which I think is important. I think it's important to me.
I just think there's this, whether we're talking about this and even into, I follow the NBA, like there's just it's more about the individual than it is like the team, because guys change teams. Yeah. Durant was at the Warriors, then he's at the Nets, now he's at the Suns. Kyrie's been with the Cavs and the Celtics and the Nets, now he's with the Mavericks. Harden was with Philly, and then he was with Brooklyn, and now he's with.
But here's what we got to decide. Okay, there's probably never been more talent in the NBA ever, right? Is that fair?
Oh yeah.
There's never been more talented players, but like, is the product better? And to me, it's not.
I think it's because of what we're talking about.
Because we don't like whatever that sense of team, and the thing that I think brings fans really to engage with the team is when they know the team, and there's a real bond there that grows over years. I think the Warriors are the best example of like keeping the nucleus together, building the team. The Heat did it for a handful of years with Wade, Bosch, and LeBron and some of those guys. But like now it just feels like it's slipping where it is an individual sport where the individual is all that matters. It's fantasy driven a little bit. It's a lot of that where they can look at the metrics and say, hey, we're still doing good. I think you got to look at it's like, do fans actually buy in like they used to? And I just feel like it's not.
Well, because I know most fans now, I think there's been like studies on this, that most like younger fans aren't fans of teams. They're fans of individuals.
They are.
And I'm with you. It's like, is that from a long-term standpoint, is that how healthy and viable is that for the product of not just the NBA, but even to bring it back to college, like for college? And so I know
college used to separate itself because it felt like the ultimate team,
right.
NFL still
feels very similar to me.
Yeah. I think
like it hasn't changed a ton.
Yeah. Because it had shifted by, the free agency period in the 90s where it kind of like was kind of that way from the 90s on. So the NFL doesn't feel as different, but college has moved so much in the last 3 to 5 years that it feels like it's getting more of the NFL. I'm like, look, do we want it to be the NFL? Because either we want it to be the NFL or we don't. And I don't. I want it to be college. And so it's either we got to let it be the NFL and just like open market, let's do it.
Right.
Or a salary cap or what, like do what you got to do.
Or you sign I think it was Mike Gundy had the idea, and now this opens up a whole nother can of worms of like now, if you have these student athletes enter into multi-year contracts, they are then probably technically employees.
Yeah.
And then that creates a whole bunch of other things. But let's just, the details be damned here. But Mike Gundy's idea was basically like, we need to have these players enter into scholarship contracts.
Yeah.
Where like, okay, Bo Ruud is going to sign a 1-year deal at Nebraska.
Yeah.
Or a 2-year deal at Nebraska, and you can have NIL things attached to that. That's, to me, that's where I think this. I don't know how all that stuff gets sorted out from a legality standpoint and all those sorts of things. But because you bring it up, I wonder what it's like from the fan standpoint with college, and where every year, especially in basketball, where it feels like there's almost a brand new team every year. Do fans like that?
They don't.
I would think they don't. The only thing that is probably exciting for fans is with the portal, you can get good in a hurry.
Yeah.
So there isn't this like, well, we're gonna have to deal with a 3-year minimum of like trying to get this thing back up. Like, no, you can get it right and pop immediately. And so I don't know. I'm just. The devaluing of team, and it feels like team is under siege.
But college especially, like that was the ultimate. It felt like the ultimate expression of a team was like 80s and 90s college basketball and football. Felt like that, like it had reached the pinnacle of like what team was about, and even into the early 2000s. I think it started to shift in basketball with the one and done era. I think the one and done was so bad for college basketball. And now it's sort of like, it's almost like basketball led the way a little bit in the college aspect where, I don't know, I just feel like it's drifting towards whatever that is that happened in college basketball now in football. And I go, look at college basketball. It's like, it's a different, so different now that like, you don't want that. You don't want what's happened, Even though in professional basketball, it's just we didn't see the movement of stars. No.
In the 90s and the 80s, the way, I mean, you can count on one hand the guys that Shaq went from Orlando to LA, Charles went from Philly to Phoenix.
Yeah.
Very few times.
Or at the very end of their careers, like a Clyde Drexler or, some of those guys when they had passed the prime, then they would do guys do it like pre-prime or in their prime.
Right. And even the role guys hung around.
Yeah.
And it just, there's been a slow erosion of that. I'm a little, I will say this, as we can wrap this up here. We're an hour into this bad boy. NIL has not played out how I thought it would in a lot of ways. Like I think we both knew that it would eventually, fast, seep its way into recruiting, and it has. But I thought NIL would be more players doing actual marketing. Like O'Shawn Mathis, we all know, we don't know what the number is, but he got a big number. What did O'Shawn Mathis do?
Nothing that I saw.
I didn't see O'Shawn Mathis. I would see Garrett Nelson, and like Kenzie Knuckles pop up over those Tanner commercials with Sean Callahan on locally here, but I would see those. But I thought there would be more, there'd be actual more marketing. Like I figured I'd be driving on I-80 and I'd see billboards with players on it. I'd see commercials with players on it more. And I think there's a part of me that thought it'd be more known what these guys were making. It's very in the back. We don't even know necessarily what they're pushing and endorsing. And I thought, so it's been different. I don't know. Do you agree? Like it's not played out how I thought it would play out.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd love to see like how these exchanges of money actually look. Like just the whole process, like from beginning to end, like you sign a deal. What's that deal look like? Okay. And what do you do? Okay. And then who gives you money? Okay. And how often you get the money? Like,
right.
I'd be interested to see like how it all flows. Like where,
but here, what's funny is I would love to like call Matt Davison, who's in charge of the 1890 initiative, and go, Matt, can you come on my podcast and explain how the mechanism from start to finish all works? It'd be like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
I'm not telling you that.
Yeah.
But isn't that, I assume that's what he'd be like. Cause I assume it's one of those things like, back like you just don't,
you probably don't want to advertise.
Like I would not want to add. There's a part of me that doesn't even want to add. Like I feel like if me asking Matt that question, it'd be like, hey Matt, real quick. Give me your political affiliation, how religious you are, your thoughts on God, and all the all the things are like, whoa, that's a little, or like, hey man, how much you doing your wife every week? How many times a week we talking? Like those kinds of questions are like, you're not really asking me that question. I view asking a collective and people that are in charge exactly how it all works for NIL is like, whoa.
It's crazy, but you know what's crazy? It's not illegal. So like,
I know.
It feels illegal.
It feels like I'm going up to Tony Soprano and being like, so tell me about, how you're going to move the merchandise.
I'm trying to think. It's like if like for a long time you've driven and like red lights mean stop. And then like at one point they're like, and just so you know, starting next year, you can run reds. And so you pull up to the red and you kind of look around.
Like, is this really happening?
And you just go through it.
Right.
And you can do it, but you still don't feel great about doing it because you've been sort of programmed like college, you don't get paid. College, you don't get paid.
Right.
College, you don't get paid.
I guess
so. We think it's like SMU, like, oh, here comes the Pony Express. You're going to get the lifetime ban. It's like, well, no, it's like there's no rules now.
Right. Maybe I'm the only way. Like, I feel like if I would run into Matt Davison, even though I'm wildly interested in how it all works, I feel like that is whoa, dude. It's running boundaries, lines.
It's the run the red light. It is.
Wow. I don't know you like that.
Yeah.
Or you're not in
with all the personal questions.
Yeah. Sheesh. My God, you just gonna ask me about that right now? It's just bizarre, though, how that works.
It is. We need to figure that. Maybe we should bring him on and talk about it.
I would love to bring Matt on to talk about that, but I just feel like it'd be like, what are you going to ask me about a bunch of other personal things? Like, all right, Matt, welcome to the Nick Pop Podcast.
What kind of underwear are you wearing?
Boxers or briefs? Like all these personal things. You can't get into it. I mean, is that it? Should we wrap it up? I don't even know. Like, I now will have to send this off and write the description, like Nick and Bo talk about stuff.
Our memories are getting bad, I think.
I know.
We can't remember what we said like 5
minutes
ago.
At the point where I spend half the time, I am now officially where, two things with this. I'll walk into rooms and I'm like, why did I come in here? I'll come into the kitchen and be like, what was I doing again? That happens all the time. And now that I have 3 kids, I am officially like, Mac, Marvin, I am never get the name right on the first try.
All M's too. That's tough.
All M's. It's hard. So yeah, our memories are getting bad, but I don't even know what we talked. We talked about stuff. Can I just say Nick and Bo talk about stuff?
And Super Mario Brothers!
Super Mario Brothers! Yeah!